Are you looking for a new whiskey adventure? Then climb in and buckle up. Get ready for one hell of a ride on the Whiskey Trip podcast with your host, Big Chief. Join in as he and his guests explore whiskey and dive into whiskey stories from around the world. Now here's your host, Big Chief.
Hey, it's old Big Chief, and yeah, you're taking another ride on the Whiskey Trip, listeners. And you know what I say, I always got a good show for you. And today, ladies and gentlemen, whiskey lovers of all ages, step right up and prepare your palates for a show unlike any other. From the sparkling shores of Ocean Springs, Mississippi, where the Gulf breeze carries whispers of oak and char, comes a man whose craft is equal parts art, science, and pure magic. Behold the master blender, a magician of mash bills, a conjurer of complexity, and the ringmaster of rich, rolling flavor. Not only a whiskey visionary, but also a stalwart wine and spirits merchant from the past, guiding seekers of the dram to bottles that sing the soul and character. He is the Gulf Coast own gust of genius, blending barrels with the grace of a maestro and the precision of a marksman. Friends, raise your glasses high and welcome with thunderous applause the one, the only Jonathan Maisano of K.LUKE Whiskey. Jonathan, I messed your last name up, but welcome to Whiskey Trip, my friend.
Thanks, Mike. Happy to be here. I know it's been a long time coming. We've been talking for the last couple of years, running to each other at events. So excited to finally get to make it on the show and hang out with you and talk about what I love. So,
well, hopefully I did you justice with that intro right there.
I appreciate the Apollo Creed introduction.
Yeah, I wanted it almost to be like you're going to the carnival and stuff, but I'm going to say that this whiskey is no joke, folks. I've been following Jonathan around whiskey shows and bumping into him, and we just couldn't make this happen. And truly, he's one of the very few NDPs, non-producing distillers, that I've actually sent an invite, said, hey, I want you to come on my show. And we actually bumped into each other in New Orleans at the New Orleans Bourbon Festival. It was the first time I'd met Jonathan, and I heard about his whiskey, and everybody's like, hey, there's this dude down in Mississippi that owns this store, and he's doing barrel picks, and they're just some magical stuff. And people would share stuff with me, and I was like, man, I got to talk to this guy. Jonathan, let's start about the history of K.LUKE. And I know you named this brand. A lot of people are like, what's K.LUKE? But you named this brand after your children, right?
That's right, Mike. Yeah, so our two children. So the whole brand is owned by myself, my wife, Jennifer. So it's just the two of us. And then we named it after our children. So our daughter, Caitlin, who actually turns 12, her birthday's next month, and our son Lucas turns 8 later on this month. So, really for me, being in business for 20 years in retail and just falling in love with whiskey, we really wanted a brand that could tell the story of, our love of family and whiskey. So that's where K.LUKE came from, giving tribute to our children and our love of whiskey. So,
well, that to me, that there's no better tribute and that shows your love than name your company after your children and stuff. Now, you've been in the spirits industry for a long time now. You used to own a store there in Ocean Springs. What year did that store start, and when did you do your first barrel pick?
So, kind of leading up to the store, I started working in restaurants at 16. By the time I was, 19, I was working in a fine dining restaurant and got to meet winemakers from all over the world, really fell in love with wine. And by the time I was 21, I got sommelier certified, first level through the Quartermaster Sommeliers. And then, from there, at 22, I set out to open up my own retail store. So we opened up December 26th in 2005. And I know that's a weird date to open up, but it was shortly after Hurricane Katrina. So, Katrina just leveled us here on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. And I had already left my job in the restaurant to open up my store, and we were getting real close to opening it when the storm hit. So it took us from August 29th until December 26th to actually be able to get the store open. So,
yeah, it's actually this year's the 20th anniversary of your store and Katrina coming up here. Only reason I know that is I got some good friends out there. Shout out to Christian and Colette with the New Orleans Police Department over there, my good buddies. But so I'm sure listeners are asking, Jonathan, what's in this first glass of whiskey? What do we got right here?
So starting off in our first glass, we're going to have our batch 12 small batch barrel strength bourbon. So this is the flagship, the silver label. So we produce this one 3 times a year. So every 4 months, we have a new batch of barrel strength bourbon that comes out.
Man, it's got that rich oak vanilla, that kettle corn that I'm always looking for. A little bit of corn pop cereal in there, you know. I think, you know, when you have a bourbon, it's gonna be corn forward, some sweetness on the nose. But hey, cheers, my friend, and welcome to the Whiskey
Cheers.
Trip.
Glad to be here.
Oh yeah, that's hitting all the notes right there. I'm getting a little peanut on this, and I don't know if that's where you're sourcing from or not, but I do get that nut richness on this right here. A little bit of that Texas Dr. Pepper that I love. So peanuts and Dr. Pepper for me as a kid, I grew up with that, and I get that in this glass right here. Beautiful expression of whiskey.
Yeah, so for us, the goal on this flagship is always, so this is a 10 barrel blend. And kind of one of the unique things about K.LUKE, we source from 8 different distilleries. So we have a ton of depth of, distilleries, mash bills. So it's a high rye, low rye mash bill. This blend is actually 9 barrels of low rye and 1 barrel of high rye. So I look at high rye, low rye, like Four Roses does. So for me, 21% and less is going to be a low rye mash bill. So anywhere from 10 to 21%. And then anything from 22 to 36% is high rye. And one of the things that makes K.LUKE special and our layers complexity to it is because we source from so many distilleries, we also source multiple mash bills from several of those. So we end up with over a dozen components to work with, and I blend everything by taste. So we can get that brightness, that richness, that fruit profile, that long finish to it, the right amount of spice in there. So that's the whole goal, to add that complexity and depth to our whiskey.
Hey, there must be 23 flavors and spices in there, because I'm going to tell you, I keep going back to that Dr. Pepper, almost a root beerish flavor in there. It super beautiful whiskey. And it drinks a little bit lower proof to me than 117.4. It's not over hot, over spiced to my palate and stuff. You said with a high rye mash bill, sometimes I'll get that to where it's just too spicy. It's cutting too much for me. This is a beautiful sipping whiskey right here.
Mike, I think that's a really good point too. So for me, people always ask, like, how do we decide kind of what the proof is? And I tell people, when I picked barrel number one, so I picked 1 barrel of Four Roses, kind of going back to my retail store in the summer of 2014. And, what I always loved about Four Roses and why it's always been a special bourbon, especially Four Roses small batch limited edition, it was a combination of mash bills, ages, so you get different yeast strains, different rye contents, different ages, all blended to be this beautifully layered, harmonious blend. And that's exactly how I blend K.LUKE. Because, in the proof, I like 115 plus or minus, 4 or 5 points, right? So anywhere from that kind of 110 to 120 realm. And if you notice, all of our bourbon lands in there. But I don't really look at the proof when I'm blending, just naturally by taste as we go through. I'll create the blends based off my notes, and then my wife and I will sit down and blind taste through them. And then we talk about what did she like, what did I like on each blend. If we both like it, it moves on to the next round. If one and not the other, I'd say, okay, what was missing? Did it need more fruit? Did it need more richness, more finish? I go back to my notes, I reblend, we retaste. And I think that result gives you, something that you can get in that 115 to 120 proof that doesn't drink hot. And you talk about spice. To me, spice is a delicate balance, right? I look at it like being a chef. It should all be well integrated. And if you have too much spice, it takes away from the more delicate fruit, floral tones of the whiskey. If you don't have enough spice, the finish can be short. So it's all about finding that right balance. I don't know if as I've gotten older, as I've just tasted more whiskey over the years, I'm close to 2,000 barrels now. I've tasted straight from the barrel. But I am not a fan of overly dry, spice-driven finishes. It's just not for me. And it's something, we take a lot of pride in that beautiful layer and that elegance to the whiskey. So I'm glad you appreciate that in the glass.
Now, how old are these barrels? Like, what's the oldest?
So we don't disclose the ages, but I always tell people the average age of what we're doing. If people know the age of something like Blanton's, Booker's, it's our average age is over a couple years older than what those are, and we go all the way up in double digits. But for me, one of the things I learned over all the years of tasting whiskey is the age doesn't necessarily matter as much as the proof or the warehouse or any of those factors compared to what do you get in a glass. So I'm a huge proponent, and all of my 400 plus single barrels I picked from my store before I sold it 18 months ago were always picked blind. And I used to tell them, like when I went to Heaven Hill, I'm probably going to pick the youngest whiskey and probably the lowest proof because I don't like overly oaked, overly wood spicy whiskey. So for me, that kind of 9-year-old bourbon coming in at 120ish proof, because you know how hot their stuff can get sometimes. Like that was a sweet spot for me. If you blend everything in double digit age, a lot of times you just get old whiskey. You get a lot of dusty, earthy spice notes, and you miss out on those more beautiful, delicate tones. So
Yeah, this is right up my this is I'm a weeded guy. I love some spice, but it's got to have those fruit notes in it. The sweetness has to be there for a bourbon, and I'm looking for that. And I'm looking for that, just that corn forwardness. A lot of people skip out on that, and man, you preached it right there. If you're looking at age statements, you don't know whiskey very well. All you're looking for is something old and it's expensive. That's what I see when I see big old double-digit age statements. I'm like, yeah, somebody's going to be paying for that, and that's what you're paying for. And I don't want to be chewing on a big old piece of oak.
Right, absolutely.
After dinner, I want something that has that fruit forwardness. This little southern peach in here.
Yeah, for sure.
Super beautiful. So when you started picking barrels for your store, how long did it take you guys to say, okay, we want to pick a barrel and do a single barrel pick here at our store?
So, when I did the first one back in 2014, right, it was a different world. Bourbon wasn't anything like it was today. And I was nervous about picking a barrel, and I love Four Roses. And a guy by the name of Byron Banks that worked there for a decade, Byron kept trying to talk to me. He's like, look, man, you love Four Roses. Come pick a barrel with us. And if you don't sell it, you can always drink it. And I'm like, well, that's true, but as a retailer, it's low margins, it's high volume. So everything you have to calculate how long it's to take you to sell something, what's the return on investment and how much time. So for me, when I finally decided to go in 2014, I had a really good customer who had just retired, and he said, look, we need to make this happen, and he said, find out how many cases I need to buy in to get my own label on the bottles, and let's go. And they said if he did 5 cases, they'd give him his own label. So off we went to Kentucky. And that first trip in 2014 was unbelievable. We went for 5 days. And not only did we get to go, meet Jim Rutledge, pick that first barrel of Four Roses. I had hosted Bill Samuels. I'm looking at a barrel head that Bill signed for this event. When Makers 46 first came out, we did a launch party. My wife and I had a restaurant for 5 years also. And this is July 27th, 2011. I hosted Bill for this event. And he said, son, when you come to Kentucky, look me up. Well, 2014, I'm finally going to Kentucky. I reach out, and the Beam guys were like, Bill's retiring. He's probably not going to see you. Well, I emailed Bill. He calls me the next day at the store. He said, here's what we're going to do. I want you to come by the house. We'll have drinks. We'll go out to dinner. And then my most prized personal bottle I own is a 1979 Wild Turkey in a Baccarat Crystal decanter that came in a wooden chest. So kind of talk about history and family in the business. My great-grandfather had the first package store in New Haven, Connecticut. They opened up December 10th, 1933. Before that, my family imported Sicilian olive oil. And I told my dad, I said, how'd you guys manage to get a liquor store 5 days after Prohibition? He said, I don't understand the question. We were Italian. It was the East Coast. It just happened. So we left it at that. So my family's had a long history. So when I first made that first trip to Kentucky, and I got to meet Jimmy and Eddie Russell, get that bottle signed, go to Bill's home, and for me, not only was the whiskey unbelievable to sit and taste that first set of barrels, but to meet the people and see the place and understand the history, I was hooked. So from 2014 until I sold my store 18 months ago, I picked 415 single barrels. 99+% were all picked in person, either with someone, master distiller or, head of quality control, someone high up in the hierarchy of tasting barrels. So I had an incredible barrel picking career, which, led me to my own brand. So.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit and compare that to what you're doing today. And last week we were talking about, or actually 2 weeks ago, I was talking about marketing and how brands could flood a market with their whiskey where it would sit on the shelf and hurt that retailer where their stuff isn't selling. How do you, as a brand, ensure that you're not hurting your stores out there by flooding the market in that? So let's say if there's 5 different stores owned by 5 different owners, do you try to not stay in go to 5 different stores and say, okay, I'm going to put me a single barrel in each store, and then there's a limited number of people that are going to buy that single barrel?
Yeah, so for us, our single barrel program is very small. You guys have seen some of our blue labels. You see up here on the shelf behind me, but those we've done. I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 of them now. A couple of private customers. Fred Minnick picked a couple for the Super Bowl back earlier this year in New Orleans. But even our brand new cast finish single barrel program that you see out there, like the maroon label on the bourbon and the rye, we only had 13 of these casks nationwide. And a couple of them we split into half barrels like Starlight does, just to be able to get them spread them around a little bit more. But we only had a couple per state. So unlike a lot of the big brands that are releasing tons of barrels, I watch brands, you see it all the time too, without naming names, but some of the big guys, they'll drop 15, 20 barrels in one city at the same time, which really hurts retailers because there's only so many people looking for every brand and price point and style. And I have a lot of issues with the single barrel program, even though that was my original background, but to me, if you're going to go out and pick a single barrel, it should be for the love of the whiskey, not just because it's trendy, and I think that's what we've seen in the last couple of years, people picking single barrels just because it's going to sell, right? Everybody buys bourbon. And for me, when I picked out single barrels of bourbon from all the distilleries over the years, it was always a special experience and something I picked because I was really excited about the whiskey in the glass. If it was the last barrel I got to drink, that's how I looked at picking my barrels. And that's my same philosophy with K.LUKE. Very limited amount out there. Even our small production stuff, a 10 barrel blend only gives us about 1,700 bottles plus or minus 100 bottles. So you're talking less than 300 case production. We are not in every store brand. We are in kind of select stores in each market. Even in the 8 states that we're in now, it's still very select. We just don't have enough product. So for us, it's a long-term partnership with our retailers and with the retailer to their consumer that all of us have great whiskey to enjoy and something special.
Yeah, you couldn't have said it any better right there, and I think you're doing it right. Your brand is exactly what it should be. You're trying to work with your retailers and realize that this game right here, this business can be brutal. And then whiskey drinkers like myself, if a company drops, let's say there's a big market like Dallas Fort Worth, and there's 20 different stores there, and a giant company drops 20 different single barrels throughout that region. I can't go and buy 20 different bottles of one brand. It just is not going to happen, especially maybe you're talking about something like Elijah Craig barrel
Right.
proof. Those seems like every store has one. And I love Heaven Hill, but I can't afford it like 89 or 90 bucks a bottle to pick all those. But what I can do is fall in love with a brand like K.LUKE, a smaller brand, and go out there and search for that one barrel that you released in a region, like the Golden Triangle here in Southeast Texas, and try to get a bottle of it and spend my money there, because I know whose hand that's going into is it's going into your family's hand. It makes sure that your kids get to play sports and all the fees that go with having kids. I want to make sure that you and your wife get to travel and enjoy life. So that's whose bottles I want to buy as a consumer, because some of it's the same whiskey, folks out there. I don't know if most people know that, but it ain't too far off from the other barrels that you're buying. So do your research and see what old Mr. Jonathan here has and what he's put out there in the market. Search him out. Now, Jonathan, I just poured another pour. Now, this is your orange label. I like to say that it's almost burnt orange, maybe, for the Texas Longhorns that are about to whoop up on Ohio State.
There you go.
This weekend. Hopefully. Shout out to my buddy Steve Johnson that plays the music on here. But what do we got in our glass right here?
So this is our toasted barrel strength bourbon. So this is batch 4 you're tasting. This is the current release. So kind of for me, going back to that chef's approach to blending whiskey, right? For me, it's the toasted barrel or any secondary cask should be a complementary note. We don't want to overwhelm the whiskey. So for Jennifer and I, the goal in these toasted barrel products is this beautiful ride of sweet and spicy kind of back and forth. We know the toasted barrels are going to add some sweetness, right? That kind of creme brulee crust, a little toasted marshmallow, but we don't want to over extract it. So batch 4 was 10 barrels of bourbon, which we finished in 7 Kelvin cooperage barrels. So anyone not familiar with Kelvin, they're a small, high quality cooperage on the outer loop just outside Louisville there in Kentucky. Really like what their process, very low and slow. Just adds a lot of depth to the bourbon. But again, we don't want to overwhelm it. So in this particular blend, toasted bourbon on batch 4, we took 10 barrels of bourbon finished in 7 Kelvin barrels. 5 of those were medium toast, no additional char. 2 of them were heavy toast, no additional char. So we wanted to add this richness and depth, great weight and viscosity, but again, not be overly oaked, which sometimes you get toasted bourbons where you get so much oak you can't taste that beautiful red fruit mid palate, and it just overwhelms the whiskey.
Well, I tell you what, this right here takes me back to my childhood when I walked in my grandmother's kitchen and she's cooking this dessert that's thick and rich and sticky. It's called Mississippi mudcake, and it had this kind of like a brownie with marshmallow fluff in there and pecans and some caramel. It is just rich and delicious. And I sipped on this, and it just took me back to that memory of that Mississippi mud cake. And how fitting is this that you're in Mississippi, and it takes me back to that memory of the Mississippi Delta, my time with my grandmother. Beautiful whiskey, my friend.
That is actually a great description. That's right. You get that, like you said, a little bit of like toasted marshmallow sweetness. You get that dark chocolate. There's some, red berry compote in the middle there, like some cobbler. Just this beautiful wave of sweet and spicy that goes back and forth. And I also really love this bourbon with cigars. There's a brand called Fairy Tago from Michael Herzog that is, he has a cigar called Suma, and it kind of has like this creamy chocolate note to it, and it pairs up beautifully with this toasted barrel bourbon. It just gives you that experience back and forth of complementing that toasted marshmallow chocolate red fruit profile in this whiskey with that cigar.
Man, I really dig this. Now, recently, you've launched into Texas, and we're going to get into a bottle that you're about to put out there into the world. But how is it as a brand launching into a new state, and especially the state of Texas?
Yeah, so for us, we started off in Mississippi, our home base. So we founded the company in 21. We bottled our first product late June in 22, and the products hit shelves in July of 22. So 3 years on the shelf. We started off just Mississippi, then we expanded to Tennessee, Louisiana. Now we're in 8 states total. So most recently, we added on Texas and Indiana. So that gives us Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Kentucky, Indiana, Wyoming, Texas, and a couple of online retailers. So 8 states now, which for us is huge as a small company. And people always ask, don't you want to expand? How fast do you want to be out there in other markets? I'm like, look, we're small. We do everything by taste. I think it's a really important fact that I always tell people, we are self-funded. So this entire company is just my wife and I. And that's all by design. I wanted to make sure we had total control over the whiskey we're buying, that we can get well-aged stock, great flavors, lots of complexity. We can release on our schedule to taste when things are ready and build high-quality, exciting batches on every release. And part of that is I can only taste so much at a time. We can only do so much. So for us going to Texas is a big deal. We've had several retailers in Texas reaching out, but Specs has been asking us for 2 years to come into Texas because they have had so much demand for our product. Now, of course, we don't even have a fraction of the demand of what Specs wants. And part of us coming to Texas, I just told them, I said, guys, look, I understand, you want 1,000 cases, but I could send you like 120 cases mixed across 3 SKUs. And that was kind of part of the deal. I said, look, I can only send you what I can send you. We'd love to grow together with you, but we're small and we're going to do everything high quality. They said, great, we'd love to hear that. And we'll take what you can send. So we just sent these current batches. We've only been in Texas now for, I guess, a month, maybe 6 weeks. So we're brand new there. Predominantly at Specs, a couple of independents here and there, but we're excited to finally be there in the market, even in limited capacity for you guys to enjoy, for all the people who've been reaching out the last couple of years wanting us to come there.
Well, a lot of folks probably outside of the state of Texas don't know about Specs, but Specs started down in Houston, and they do a mass amount of work for charity throughout the state of Texas. I think people would be surprised, but they are almost like the Total Wine or the liquor bar of the state of Texas. They got stores all over the state. Started from a great small family, and they're still family owned. So I love that you're going with a company like that. Some people try to bash on them, but they're just doing work. They're doing their business. So it's I love that you're going with them and that they're working with you with smaller brands, trying to ensure that they don't drink them dry, but still offering them to get into a state like the Lone Star State and get your whiskey into consumers' hands. Because people keep asking, where can I get this at? Where can I get this? Well, now you can get it at Specs in the state of Texas. But like you said, Alabama, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Wyoming, and online. Who are some of your online retailers?
Yeah, don't forget our friends over in Louisiana. They'll be all sort of mad at us.
I did forget about Louisiana.
So, online, Sealbox, you can find us on Bourbon Outfitter just recently. They've been asking us to come online there. So we're on Sealbox, Bourbon Outfitter, and Shared Pour. So those three outlets you can find our stuff as well, which is great because that gives us, for me, the online component is really important because they can ship to most of the states. I think between the three of them, they ship to close to 45 states. And again, we're small. It's just my wife and I. And then we do have a national sales director in Louisville now, kind of communication between us and the distributors. So I can spend more time focusing on the whiskey and meeting accounts live. But being such a small company that's so quality driven on tasting and building something special, those online retailers are really important because you can go on there and all these other states be able to get us. And we're never going to be in every state. We're thinking maybe 12 states total, which I know people don't like to hear because we have a lot of love out there across the country. And I don't know, people keep asking me, how are we going to scale production? And to be honest, I don't really know. Right now we're doing 10 barrel blends. Is it 12 barrels? Is it 20 barrels? I'm not really sure. But for us, everything we do will always be every single barrel, taste to taste, blind tasting to blind tasting to build you guys something special. So once I hit the ceiling where I feel like, I can no longer blend this many barrels and keep the quality the same, we just won't go any bigger on the batches. So we could either do a few more or it'll just be what it is, whatever's out in the market's out there. So,
well, you don't want to. I talked about this last week with companies that are hurting right now and they're laying people off and they're having issues. And I'm assuming that you don't have anything overseas, so the tariffs aren't affecting you.
Yeah, the only issue with us a little bit on tariffs is some dry components, glass, some of those things. Really, where we ran into a tariff issue was our secondary casks. When we get into that last whiskey, those secondary barrels, we ran into a little bit of delay there on our bringing some secondary casks in. But yeah, like I said, we are totally focused on the consumer and putting something special in your glass on it. Every time you open a bottle of K.LUKE, it's something exciting, something different. And we call it the multi-layered whiskey experience. That's why our hashtag, is the spirit of blending, because that's what it's all about, is blending these delicious spirits to a high quality and making an amazing experience every time somebody opens a bottle.
Well, on the second half, listeners, we're really going to dig into blending and how K.LUKE does do blending. And then we're going to talk about how Jonathan's education, his whiskey education, and his spirits education with wine have helped him create an amazing process. So we were at almost 30 minutes. A great first half discussion, Jonathan. Listeners, you stick with us and we'll be right back. Leaper's Fork Distillery is an artisan distillery working to bring back the history and heritage of a small batch whiskey production to Williamson County. The distillery crafts premium spirits using local ingredients and limestone filtered water to create superior spirits with a signature taste. Yeah, I love their wheated bourbon. Leaper's Fork Distillery is characterized primarily as a low-volume, low-impact concept of production. They are excited and honored about bringing back a lost art and industry to a county that always puts its history and heritage at the forefront. Visit them today at leapersforkdistillery.com. All right, listeners, we're back for the second half, and I got Jonathan here with K.LUKE, this dynamic blending company out there that's just putting out these I don't know, they almost got a cult following, these bottles, because they will pop up on all kinds of social media sites, and people will be like, hey, have you tried this? Have you got this? Do you want a sample of this? And that's what builds companies right there, is that cult following, that love of a brand like K.LUKE. And I'm sure that when you see that stuff out there, Jonathan, that you just are like, man, this is awesome.
Yeah, for us, it's been an incredible journey, going from picking single barrels for over a decade and a decade before that, really studying wine and honing in my palate to, when we launched K.LUKE, I'll never forget when Fred Minnick on the first batch was going to taste it and review it, and I actually had Greg Metz from Old Elk was standing in my store. I was getting ready to host him for an event, and we're sitting there talking, and somebody goes, "Oh, that's really exciting about Fred, but if he doesn't like your brand, it's dead. You guys are out of business right now." And I'm like, "Well," they go, "I hope you're not nervous." I was like, "Well, hell, man, I wasn't before, but really for us, we believe in the product from day one. We put a ton of love and just really trying to build something special. We kind of part of our process. Not only do I create the batch based off my notes, right? We own hundreds of barrels. I take notes on all the barrels. I rate all of them, and for me, I break them all down by your major categories, right? Aromatics, upfront palate, mid palate, back end. But then for me, if it's fruit driven, right? Is it red fruit? Is it dark fruit? If it's red fruit, is it more like fresh, vibrant, like juicy fruit, or is it like baked fruit, more like a fruit tart? So I rate all the whiskeys based off all these different components, richness, spice level. So when I go to create a blend, I look at it like being a chef, right? Go to my pantry of flavors and say, okay, kind of what's our end goal way over here? How do we get there? What's the path to create this beautiful whiskey experience? And then I just start pulling like, okay, we know we want so much red fruit. We want some citrus. We want to have all this layers of depth and complexity. How do we get there? Like that's part of the journey. I think what makes K.LUKE so exciting and why every batch is different and unique and is something special for our consumers. We are not trying to have every batch be duplicated and be the same. Every batch has its own personality and its own layers and I don't know, just its own flavor profile, and that's where it's been really exciting for us in the market.
Yeah, I really do think that that's something important to remember. One of the things that I love that you said there is about Fred Minnick and his award show, and important to tell other shows out there or people just getting started in a brand is to remember your voice has it has reason with listeners out there, with viewers, that you could crush a brand if you're big enough, like Fred Minnick and stuff, and to be very mindful of what you're putting out there about brands. Because Jonathan, I can hear your daughter, your kids in the background. You got a family, and I'm sure that if Fred would have just bashed on you, you would have been like, man, that's it. How do I recover from this? And it could take you years to recover from something like that. Somebody like Fred that has that big voice in the whiskey community, it must have been scary. And then to somebody to point it out to you, you're like, damn, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I think there's when you taste whiskey, right? First of all, it's so subjective, and I try to tell people whether it's wine or whiskey, it doesn't matter if it's a $10 bottle or a $1,000 bottle. What any critic says, what I say, what Mike says, you have to find what you like. That's the most important thing, right? My dad would always tell people when I would talk about tasting notes and what I got, my dad would say, "Look, I either like it or I don't." It was very simple to him. There's no in between. It was either something that he really enjoyed or something just wasn't for him. And I think people have to remember too, there's a big difference between a bad product and something that's just not for you. Um, I taste lots of stuff, and lots of things blind against K.LUKE, and there's lots of products that just aren't for me. Stylistically, doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. It's just not my particular style, right? It could be too low in proof, it could be too spice driven, or not have enough mouthfeel, right? But it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad because everybody's looking for something different, and it's all about finding what you like and what speaks to you. So yeah, it's I always said, if you have a problem with my whiskey, we definitely want to know. It's like friends I know that own restaurants. If there's a problem, they want to know. Now, you shouldn't go online and write, a 4-paragraph about how terrible your experience was. You should pull aside the manager, the owner, and say, "Hey, look, I love coming here, but here's what happened today. Just want to let you know so you can offer a better process, a better product for your consumer so you don't suffer in the end," right? I mean, you want to know if you're doing something that people aren't excited about, but you don't want to go online and bash somebody, right? You want to let the owner know directly and be like, "Hey guys, here's what I found. Just letting you know it's not for me, or this experience was bad because this happened with your staff," or whatever the case may be.
Hit the nail on the head again right there. That's some of my pet peeves right there is, for me as a podcaster, if I didn't like somebody's expressions, I would reach out to them personally and say, hey, I've got some issues with this. I don't think you're ready for the show. Let's wait a little bit, or walk me through this. This is how I drink your whiskey, with a clean glass, no ice in it, no water. Let them know how I'm experiencing their whiskey and stuff. And then I want to know their process, and has it probably cost me a little bit where, people are getting paid as consultants? It probably does, but I'm also building my own brand, and I want people to trust my voice out there for their brands and stuff. And, I want to think about how did you go about doing your process? Now, you say that you're a restaurant owner and you've owned a spirits wine store, and you went through level 1 training as sommelier. Has both of those experiences helped you as a master blender?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so for me, studying wine, again, super subjective to taste, right? But we would taste in a group of about 12 people. And the restaurant I worked at, we had an amazing sommelier, super laid back guy that was just happy going fishing and drinking beer as he was to open up a $5,000 bottle of wine. So, for me in my 20s, I've had some of the best wine in the world, and super fortunate to, just have an opportunity to taste some incredible wine. And even after I left the restaurant, I continued to go with this gentleman and taste, and kind of with a group. And when I was studying for the sommelier training, they would tell us, like, you need to go to the grocery store and you need to smell like all the produce, right? You need to smell as many seasonings as you can. You need to taste as many things. You've never had a lychee? Well, let's go get some and open it up, because you can't explain something by either smell or taste if you've never experienced it, right? And it's all experience driven. It's all memory recall. So if you don't have the bandwidth of a lot of depth of different aromatics and flavors, how can you possibly identify them in whiskey? And I think that was such a huge part of looking for those nuances in wine and studying them. And I find myself doing that in everything, right? When I go to a restaurant, I don't want to have like a really nice cut of beef, right? A really nice steak covered in sauce where I can't taste the steak. So again, I think it's all about layers. It's all about complexity. It's the same way I look at finishing, right? It should be just a light finishing sauce on that finishing barrel, but shouldn't overwhelm the beautiful core whiskey. We're not just randomly throwing stuff in these barrels for our secondary, whether it be toasted or cask finish. We're trying to build an experience and layers. So I think all those things and honing in my life, this fine dining restaurant I worked at, they're like, okay, well, you can't talk about caviar to your customers if you don't know. So we would sit and do a caviar taste, right? Or lobster tails. If you couldn't tell the difference between, Australian, South African, cold water, like how could you describe to the customer the texture and meat difference or the sweetness level? So all that applies to whiskey as well, right? How can you build an exceptional whiskey if you don't have a lot of experience at tasting? Again, I've tasted almost 2,000 barrels straight from the barrel now. I've gotten taste with pretty much every master distiller and every rick house out there. So I think all those things are part of what makes K.LUKE special and what got us to where we are today. So absolutely, all those experiences are huge.
Now, I poured another glass of whiskey, listeners. I know we've been 9 minutes in this second half, but I've had it poured. I'm sipping on it. Now, this is your rye whiskey right here I'm sipping on, Jonathan. Tell me all about this right here.
So this is our brand new release. So this is our batch 5 toasted barrel strength rye. So batch 5 is coming in at 117 proof even. So, for the rye, all those barrels I've picked over the years, my wife wasn't a big lover of a lot of the ryes that I picked, right? And I think like most consumers, when I go to a tasting and talk about rye whiskey, I always hear, I don't like rye. And it's like, okay, why? If you talk to people who've had a lot of Indiana ryes, they find them too herbaceous, whether it's overly minty or dill. You talk to people like Kentucky rye, and a lot of times they don't love them because they're just too much cinnamon, nutmeg, coriander, right? Big, spicy powerhouse ryes. So when I told Jennifer we were going to do a rye, she's like, well, the one that I liked that you picked, which was Peerless, right? And Peerless was more of a delicate, really well-balanced rye. I'm like, we can do that. I can build you that rye. So from Indiana, and the first couple batches were only Indiana. And the reason being is I couldn't find the right Kentucky rye to complement that without overwhelming it. But starting with batch 3, again, we're on batch 5 now. We had a blend of Kentucky and Indiana blended together. So from Indiana, I looked for more candied citrus floral barrels, which is what you get up front on the rye, and then the back end, more like dark chocolate, roast coffee, like this nice richness, but not overly spicy. And then we finish this rye in our Kelvin barrels. So when we dump out our bourbon, we take those one-time used Kelvin barrels, then we age our rye in there for about 3 months. So this batch 5 is 2 medium toast barrels, 2 heavy toast barrels, one time used from the bourbon. And the reason we went one time used is we wanted this beautiful, delicate rye. It was more of a bourbon drinker's rye, and I didn't want the toast to overwhelm those softer, brighter tones. So that was the goal behind this rye. And this is batch 5 that just came out and is available right now in the market.
Beautiful whiskey right here. I get a little bit of that orange zest, orange marmalade on this right here, of great stickiness. This is a amazing dessert whiskey for me right here, an after dinner drink that I could sip on. I could see why your wife loves this. It does have those hints of white chocolate to me. You know, that beautifulness of that white chocolate with that orange zest works perfectly together, and I almost get a little bit of that campfire toasted marshmallow on this, just a hint of it. It is a super beautiful whiskey, and I'm glad that you thought outside the box and not like, hey, what's everybody else doing? I'm going to do something different. And I would assume there's a little bit of that Kentucky style rye in here, and a little bit of that Indiana rye, which is a 95.5. I definitely can get the 95.5 in this right here.
So believe it or not, this is from 3 different distilleries, Kentucky and Indiana only. So everything we do is only sourced from Kentucky and Indiana. 3 different distilleries. All the rye in here is 95.5. And I never tell people after they taste, because you would never know it, right? If you hear 95.5 Indiana, you're like, oh, it's going to be minty. It's probably going to have some dill notes in there. You know, you hear Kentucky, you're like, oh, it's going to have tons of spice. But again, it's all about finding the right barrels in the core whiskey. And again, we're going through lots of rounds of tasting and working on adjusting to give you this beautifully balanced, delicate whiskey. I also don't think this drink's like 117 proof. It's got, like you said, that beautiful candy brightness up front, then the richness, and just a hint of that, like almost like if you poured your bourbon over a toasted marshmallow and just picked up a slight hint on the back end, it gives you that viscosity and mouthfeel from the toasted barrels.
It almost makes me think, I've never tried that before, to take a toasted marshmallow, put it in a glass, and pour whiskey over it for like a dessert and see what happens. Man, I might have to try that and see if it's good or not. I can't imagine it's bad at all.
But, you know, you kind of talk about, you know, which again, I know the critics, some people care a ton, some don't care at all, you know, but for us, like I said, our Barrel Strength Bourbon, you know, to be on Fred's, we've been on his top 100 whiskey list. We've had 5 offerings the last 3 years. Twice we cracked top 25. Toasted Barrel Bourbon, our batch 2 last year, San Francisco, we got 99 points, double gold. Qualified us for Bourbon of the Year. I told Jennifer, I was like, we got to fly out there. I don't know if we're going to win, but just the opportunity to be in a room with 300 of the best brands. Our Toasted Bourbon went on to win Cask Finished Bourbon of the Year last year in San Francisco. You know, our Toasted Rye, batch 3 in the Barleycorn Awards, we got 97 points, best rye of fall. And Fred's Ascot Awards this year, batch 4, double platinum. We almost won Rye of the Year. We made it to the final round after winning our category. So again, we've really put a lot of time and love. If you're going to go out and spend, you know, $115 or so, $120 in a bottle of whiskey, we don't want it to be good. We want it to be great. And we have really put a ton of time. I taste most days of the week, really trying to build something special here. So again, when you're going to go out and spend your whiskey dollars on our product, we want to make sure it over delivers and you know, could stand up to any of your favorite whiskeys out there, stylistically in the flavor profile of what you're buying and what you like. So
I think you're hitting on all cylinders, and to be named 2024 Blender of the Year for the Barleycorn Awards, I think that's truth to power right there, saying that you really are a master blender. And there's a lot of great master blenders out there for big brands and small brands that are just killing it, but you're hitting on all cylinders. So to have guys like Fred Minnick, or even myself, to invite somebody on and say, hey, I want to have this brand on. That's saying something, I think, my friend, that you're doing your job. You're not getting in front of your skis out there.
Right.
And just, you're really, to me, you're not after the almighty dollar. You're after to make sure that your consumers are getting the very best product that you can put in a glass. And you're very upfront about where you're getting the stuff. Now, the one thing I wish you would do maybe, and maybe we'll see this in the future, is maybe go some of them other states and try something from like the old Lone Star State here. and get a little Texas twang in your whiskey, maybe. And I'm sure that's probably something would be hard to do because you're known for that Indiana, Kentucky blend, but you haven't put anything from Tennessee in your barrels, or Texas or any other state that's making whiskey out there. Do you have any future plans for that?
So I think that segment of conversation gives me a lot of things to talk about. So one, the master blender thing. So for me, when we founded the company, again, we've been working on it for years, as I saw the single barrel landscape changing. But when we founded the company in 21, I told Jennifer, for me, I'm just the blender. And until I feel like I've earned that title, and I had no intention of being the master blender until we earned it. So when the Barley Corn Awards named me the Master Blender of the Year, Blender of the Year in 24, I felt that even though it only been a couple years, I felt that I earned the title. Again, I know the brand's only a couple years old, but I tell people I basically studied wine and whiskey and honing in my palate my entire adult life. So, I didn't take the Master Blender title lightly because for me, it's something earned, right? Like talking to Eddie Russell, he had to earn being master for so long with his dad over 30 years, and so for me, I tell people, again, it's a young brand, but I've spent my whole life honing in my palate and studying wine, studying whiskey, tasting barrels, identifying flavors. You talk about doing something different. We could sell single barrels, 8, 9, 10, 11-year-old single barrels like everyone else all day long, and my path would be much easier. But for me, the blending and really trying to build something special and something that someone like yourself or any of you guys that really love whiskey, it's something that if you're going to recommend K.LUKE to your friends, your listeners, it's something you can be proud of, right? When a group of guys come to your house and you're going to sit and pull out a half dozen bottles and light up a cigar and go sit outside, we want K.LUKE to be in that conversation, be on the top of your mind as something truly exceptional, which is far more important to me than just overall sales and, like you said, the mighty dollar. So I'm glad you appreciate that because we could sell straight single barrels all day long. And again, it'd be much easier. We have tons of demand, people reaching out every single day. But for me, the blending is something longevity-wise. It's something really special. It's something that makes K.LUKE stand out in the market compared to other products. Why we picked Kentucky, Indiana to source from. So for me, there's lots of other great whiskey out there, right? You look at, like I was just with Ryan at Pursuit United, checking out their new spot in Louisville last weekend. And they use Sagamore in their products. And they've got some other things from New York and right in Tennessee. But for me, what I found is Kentucky and Indiana, those two styles of whiskey just play really well together. I think they complement each other without overwhelming. Sometimes if you get whiskey, say from Texas, right, it is very, it's from Texas, right? It's big, it's grippy. The oak interaction, you get a lot of it because it's so hot. If you look at something like Tennessee, a lot of times you get a lot of minerality. It can be overwhelming to the core blend. So, and we may do some other things in the future. I've had a lot of guys that I know want to do some collaborations, but again, I'm small. I can only focus on so much that I can actually taste. So we'll see what the future holds. But again, for us, it's always about the quality of what you get in the glass is first and foremost of anything we do.
Well, I love that you're focused on what you're putting out and not making that money grab. That a lot can be said about that, and companies out there that will do a money grab or change their stance on certain issues out there. It's almost sickening to me that they'll kind of depart from what their mission set was to begin with, and you're not doing that. You're like, I'm gonna stick with putting out good whiskey. Damn it all. I want to make money. I'm a businessman, but and I'm sure your wife, you got to keep the wife happy too, because she's part of the business. But you're sticking to it, and I appreciate that you're doing something like that. Now, I just poured this you sent me another little bottle. It hadn't been bottled yet. This is your K.LUKE PX Sherry cask. Run us through this right here.
Yeah, so this is one of those limited cask finish single barrels I was talking about. So we debuted earlier this year, 13 different cask finishes. And, most of them are already out in the market. There was a couple of them I thought needed a little bit more time. So again, it's all about trying to find balance of time and extraction and flavor profile. And this PX Sherry, which is Pedro Jimenez, just thought it needed a little bit more time. So this barrel is getting ready to get bottled, and it is actually headed to specs in Texas. So heading to the homeland for you. But these secondary cask finishes, again, you see back behind me, you see a lot of K.LUKE, but you can also see there's a lot of other bottles. So picking over 400 barrels, there were certain casks whether I picked them or not, just cool things I tasted over the years, right? Like Tawny Port and Pedro Jimenez and Armagnac, Cognac. So for us in our single barrel program, I really wanted to offer something different, something special. Now we do, like I said, some straight single barrels on occasion, but that's just me kind of tasting through and finding great barrels for people to pick from. But we really wanted our barrel program, this cask finish program, to be about creating a core blend and then secondary finishing it in different casks from around the world. And then people travel to Bardstown, um, or if samples if we had to, some of the people that couldn't travel that far, but again, doing it live with me, and find something that stood out to them. So when people came for these blind tastings, we didn't tell them what they were, if they were bourbon, if they were rye, what the finish was. I'm like, look, just taste them and let's start eliminating, what stands out to you, what doesn't, and let's get through them and find something special. So this is a Pedro Jimenez cask finish bourbon that's going to be a spec single barrel heading to Texas for you guys. So,
Man, this thing. Now the nose, and maybe my nose is getting a little fatigued already. It's got a beautiful nose on it though.
yes, sir.
That PX sherry cask is coming out. That sherry, I really love it whenever somebody does finish in a PX sherry cask. But what is a killer on this right here is when it hits the front of your palate and rolls back to your mid palate. I'm getting like some toasted pecans on this, some dried like nectarines. I get a little bit of that root beer candy I'm always hinting about. It's very, very beautiful.
Hash is good. It's got, like you said, it's got that, Pedro Jimenez gives you like that date and kind of dried fruit. I think that root beer candy is really good, like on the finish. You get like that sweet little hint of spice in there, but it's mouth coating and it's rich, and it's chewy. Like I like to take dates and put them in my green egg and put just a little bit of blue cheese in there, wrap them in a little bit of like prosciutto and just cook them. Or we'll do like a fig jam. And like I get some of that kind of like date with like that fig jam, that little bit of just richness, and kind of a little bit of grill tone to it, a little bit of smoke, char.
You're speaking my love language right there when you're talking about figs and dates. And figs and dates, I would tell listeners, if you're doing a bourbon share or a bourbon tasting at your house, that's almost two things that you should have on your menu, with some either some hillbilly prosciutto, some good ham, or some prosciutto. Not a lot of spice in there, just a little bit of saltiness. It works well, and then like dried nectarines, any kind of dried fruits pair well with that. This is a super beautiful whiskey, and I actually have another bourbon social influencer stopping by my house here a little bit. The Bourbon Gator on TikTok and on Facebook and on Instagram. He's going to stop by here, and I'm going to actually share some of these samples with him so he can talk about them on his show.
Awesome.
That's rising tides raises all ships right there. A new social media platform, listeners out there, that this young man over in the Houston area that's doing it right, talking whiskey right. As my grandma always said, if you don't have nothing nice to say, don't say it at all. So I think he's deserving of some of this samples, and I'm going to make sure that I hook him up, and maybe you'll see some of that K.LUKE content on his page. Man, what 4 great expressions you had, Jonathan. Let's talk about your socials for a second. Where are you guys on social media?
Yeah, so I tell people, no matter which one of our channels you reach out to, it's always me that responds. So kind of our responsibilities that come between my wife and I. So I do all the original tasting and talking. Jennifer runs the finances, so super important. She grew up in the finance world, so we started off waiting tables together. But she is super dialed in on numbers. Like she could sit and look at the computer for 8 hours and look at spreadsheets, which I can't take more than about an hour of that. I want to be out in front of people. So we're a great team, and then both of us taste the whiskeys together, which again, another thing I think makes K.LUKE exciting is the female and male perspective, right? We each pick up on different notes. We both really love something. It's something special. But you can find us on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube. Everything is pretty much K.LUKE Whiskey Company. And any of those things you reach out to, it'll be myself responding. People are always like, oh, who does your content? Who is that that's cooking on the green egg and drinking whiskey and smoking cigars? I'm like, no, that's all us enjoying and loving what we do. Um, but yeah, give us a follow. If you go to our website, K.LUKE you can sign up for our newsletters. We also have merchandise available now. We've had a lot of people asking for that the last year, and we finally found a high quality company that's able to get it delivered out to people quickly. And but yeah, we appreciate all the love and what everybody enjoys about K.LUKE. And before I forget, this is what that packaging is going to look like on that cast finish single barrel. When you see that PX sherry rolling into specs here, probably mid-September, so for Bourbon Heritage Month. But that's what the label is going to look like.
What's that going to go for in specs?
So our cast finish single barrels retail for $10-ish more than our core lineup. So like our core stuff with them, I think is 115, 116. So it'll be somewhere in that 125 to 130. And again, it's the only PX sherry cast finish bourbon we have nationwide. We only did one. So our barrel program, we only did one of each one of them. There might be a little overlap between bourbon and rye. So if you saw like something, in two different places, it's because they split the barrel. I started realizing quickly when people came to taste barrels, everybody wanted multiples, and I was like, "There's no way." Our guys wanted a bourbon and a rye, so we're going to do predominantly half barrels moving forward, just to get a little bit more spread. But they'll be in totally different regions, right? So you might see a half in maybe in Texas, and the other half going to Tennessee or Indiana. But again, it's all about the love of the whiskey and putting out something special for you guys to enjoy. So
I love it, man. I love it. And listeners, you see right back here, I got a bottle and I got a hat and I got 2 T-shirts for you for a giveaway. I know you're thinking, is Big Chief going to continue this giveaway thing? I am, and Jonathan was nice enough to share a bottle of whiskey, a hat, and 2 T-shirts. And this is what I want to do for you right here, listeners. What we're going to do, and there might be something else in that box. I think there's a glass in there too. What we're going to do on Instagram on this episode right here, you'll see a logo that says the Whiskey Trip. It'll have Jonathan's mug on there, his headshot, as they would call it. The release of this episode right here. What I want you to do is I want you to tag 4 people on that episode. Make sure you follow K.LUKE on all social media apps, especially Instagram, and follow the Whiskey Trip. But for a bonus, there's a bonus here. What I want you to do, you could do it on Facebook on the post, you could do it on TikTok, or you could do it on YouTube, because I know some people have it across a plethora of social media platforms, and some of them don't have all of them. But if you post your favorite expression of K.LUKE, in any of those comments across social media, that's a bonus. But if you also take and post a photo, like on TikTok or Facebook, that's 2 places you can comment with a photo of yourself with some K.LUKE in your hand from your whiskey shelf, I'll give you a bonus for that too. We'll let this run for 1 week. We're trying to get K.LUKE more business, more people talking about that whiskey. Tell your friends about this. What a great giveaway. This bottle right here, what's this retail for right here?
That's about 115. That's our batch 12 small batch barrel strengths. That's the current release on the market right now.
So with everything together, this is over $150 giveaway with a cap, 2 T-shirts, a glass. That's an amazing giveaway of whiskey. 117.4 proof. I will guarantee you're going to love this, because I loved it. You can hear my tasting notes on this right here. Make sure you put in for this giveaway. You got to reside in the United States, and you got to be 21 years of age. Now, these aren't scams. People are getting these. I've had some couple people saying I'm trying to scam people. I'm not. I don't need any more whiskey in my house. I'm trying to get rid of it. So please enter to win Monday night, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. You'll see my big old ugly mug come on with a video and announce the winner. Yes, I'm the guy that decides who gets this bottle. So please follow the rules. And then, hey, bust out those bottles of K.LUKE, take a photo of yourself, and get a bonus. Or tell me your favorite expression on YouTube, on any of the social media platforms. And then follow K.LUKE on all social media platforms. I really would love it, and I'm sure Jonathan would love that too.
Yeah, absolutely. For us, it's all about, again, we're small releases, we're a small company, getting you guys the information when we have single barrel releases, when we have tasting events. So you can run into Mike and myself when we're out at different events in New Orleans and different places. And, looking forward to getting some of the Texas whiskey festivals. But again, we'd love to let you know what we got going on. If you follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, it's just my wife and I enjoying whiskey, sharing the story about what we do, sitting outside, cooking on my green egg, enjoying K.LUKE, smoking a cigar, just relaxing. That's what whiskey's all about, right? Get together with your friends, your family, have a good time, sit, relax, and just have fun with it. That's what whiskey's all about. So, like Mike said, give us a follow, Facebook, Instagram, sign up for our newsletter on our website, and just thank you all for appreciating. We appreciate you guys for enjoying what we do. And Mike, glad to finally get on here with you. It's been fun to run into you all the festivals and enjoying some pours. I really appreciate your love for the brand and supporting Jennifer and I and the family. So you guys keep enjoying it. We'll keep blending it for you.
Well, Jonathan, I appreciate you taking this ride on the whiskey trip. I really appreciate you sending some stuff for a giveaway and supporting my show, the Whiskey Trip. Now, listeners, you know what I like to say. If you're listening to me, make sure you give old Matt and Mark a listen on any of the podcast apps out there, on YouTube. The Bourbon Life, they're putting out great content. Now, if you like what they're doing and you like what I'm doing, make sure you leave us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, and make sure you write some comments. Now, you can take those comments that you wrote about the whiskey trip, and you can put them over on my Facebook page. I'm at about 73 comments right now of reviews on there. I'm really trying to hit 100 before the end of the year. Help me do that. Check out my other reviews on there of distilleries that have talked about me, of my other great guests. Those reviews, those comments, they help get great guests on my show and great brands on my show. Great guests like Jonathan here and K.LUKE Whiskey. That's how I get it to roll right there. If you have a whiskey brand in your backyard, I don't talk about vodka, I don't talk about tequila, and I don't talk about rum. I might drink one every once in a while, or some barrel-aged gin. I like that. So, but I stick to the whiskey. I want to lift up craft distilleries out there. I am the king of craft whiskey, baby. I will talk about it if you send it to me. So if you're a distillery out there, or if you're a listener and you want somebody in your backyard to come on the whiskey trip, make them reach out to Mike at the Whiskey Trip. It's that simple. If you're somebody that has a company out there and you want to advertise in a different way on a podcast with hundreds of thousands of listeners out there across the world, hit me up at Mike at the Whiskey Trip. I'd really appreciate it. You help me roll down the road and find better whiskey. But keep listening. I really appreciate it. I got some great shows coming up. More great whiskey to give away. I got some right over here behind me. There's a bottle over there for some lucky listener right there. So keep listening. This is Old Big Chief, and thanks for taking this ride with me, baby.